So we've just arrived yesterday in Delta, Utah, which is a very tiny rural town in central Utah. And the only reason we stopped here is because there's an RPI campground here that we could get into for cheap. So we're here for a week. However, we really wanted to visit Salt Lake City, which is 2+ hours north of us. So we decided that instead of trying to drive that length of time in and out in one day, we've got an Airbnb for one night tonight. So we just arrived yesterday, and this morning we're packing up just for a quick overnight to Salt Lake City to an Airbnb. I'm just packing up some wraps, and we've got a whole bunch of snacks and everything, and it's really unusual for us to have to pack to leave the RV.
It felt like a lot of work.
It does feel like a lot of work, because you have your house with you all the time. It's just so convenient. And then even when you have to pack a suitcase and think about toiletries and snacks and what else do I need, it's really unusual, even though we used to do it all the time.
Yeah, but especially for overnight, it feels like it's a lot. But this lets us kind of go well into the evening. Mm-hmm. And then when we get up tomorrow, we take our time, do stuff there. So we figured it was worth, because we probably would have gone up a couple times otherwise, which is a 4-hour round trip. So you put that all together, this seemed like a pretty good, fun way to do it. And it's a kind of a cool way to use an RV, that you don't have to take it everywhere you go.
Right.
But you can still use it as your home you return to and pop off to an Airbnb, in a few hours away as well.
Yep. And the trick is to try to get a cheap Airbnb. At least it was for us. So we were able to find a private room in a house for only $50. So we figured that was worth it for one night.
And it has a little kitchenette in it. And we've done that before, where private rooms that are described a certain way, we know, this is going to be almost as though we have the whole place to ourselves. So.
All right. So let's go up to Salt Lake City. This nice little stop on this back road up to the Great Salt Lake. It's a Pony Express way station monument. Faust Station was here in 1860 and 61. So we've been reading these little plaques about the Pony Express. It only ran for 1 year, which I didn't realize, and it was the main way to carry mail quickly from Missouri to Sacramento, California. St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento. And in the 1850s, it took 6 months to get news from the east to California. And by the time the news arrived, it was too old. So there was some businessmen who wanted to build a new enterprise to get mail there faster. And they guaranteed that the Pony Express would get mail from Missouri to California in 10 days. And it says that Mustang ponies can run at full speed for about 10 to 12 miles. So they had to have waypoints at regular intervals so that the riders could change out their horses. Well, in some areas of Utah and Nevada, there weren't way stations, and the ponies had to ride sometimes maybe 25 or 50 miles, which was really overextending them. So they would set up these little way stations, maybe just with a tent and a person and a little corral for the horses where the riders could switch out. So this is one of those stations at Faust Station, Utah. That's really cool. However, after they spent so much time making the route and improving the route through Utah and Nevada to get to California faster, only 1 year later in 1861, the telegraph was completed transcontinentally. So once that happened, there was really no need for the Pony Express, and it kind of died out. So all that worked just for 1 year, but it's an interesting piece of American history. First stop today is at the Visitor Center at Great Salt Lake. And there's even a little RV campground here with a few spots. Did you ever buy sea monkeys when you were a kid? These little kits that you just put water in and these little things hatch in it? Well, they're tiny brine shrimp, and they grow here in one of the only living things that grows in Salt Lake, Great Salt Lake. Because of the salt level here, no fish can live here. And if you look real close, you can see that they're just little shrimp. And it says here that they harvest them out of the lake, and it's a $50 million industry for the local economy here. Jason tasted it, so I guess I will too, just to say I did. Salty. Not overly salty, just a little, like regular salt water. So there are 4 rivers or streams that come into Great Salt Lake, but there is no outlet. So the only way that water can get out of here is to evaporate, which of course leaves the salt behind, and that's why it's so salty. And man, as a result, it does not smell good here. Doing our regular GPS My City walking tour of the city today. We're going to do all of the Temple Square and Mormon stuff tomorrow. So right now we're just walking around the Capitol building area and some of the neighborhoods. The beehive is the symbol of Utah. You see it on the state flag and even on the road, interstate signs. It'll have a little picture of a beehive. And because the Mormons have such a big influence here, they place a high priority on being industrious, having a good work ethic, being prepared, and so the beehive is kind of their symbol of that. It feels so European here in Salt Lake because of all these mountains surrounding with the snow on the top. It feels very much like Switzerland and Germany to me. It's really gorgeous. We're at the Ensign Peak Memorial Park. We're just climbing up to the
mound.
the short
not exactly the peak.
Overlook, not the top of the peak, because it's very steep. So Ensign Peak is the location outside of Salt Lake City. When the Mormons first entered the Salt Lake Valley in 1847, Brigham Young, who was their leader at the time, climbed to the top of this hill with a group of men and overlooked the valley and said, yes, this is the place. They had started, the Mormon religion started in upstate New York in a place called Palmyra, which is actually just a half an hour from where Jason and I lived for 15 years in Rochester, New York. Sorry, I'm so out of breath. We just did this climb, plus Salt Lake City is a very high elevation. So there's lots of fascinating Mormon history in upstate New York if you're interested in checking out more about it. But anyway, they were persecuted in New York, so they left there. They were persecuted in Ohio, Missouri, Illinois, and along the way, Joseph Smith, who was the founder, died, and Brigham Young took over the group. So when Brigham Young's group came here in 1847, this is the peak where he overlooked the city and said, yes, this is the place where we can settle. Good morning. We stayed in our Airbnb last night, right in Salt Lake City, and now we are going to do some more exploring. I had a rough night. I didn't not sleep very well, which of course, anytime I sleep somewhere that's not my own bed, it's a rough night, but also I'm a little bit sick with a cold. So anyway, we're going to push on. Next, we're going to head over to Temple Square. This is the large Mormon complex right in downtown Salt Lake City, where the Mormon Temple is, and the Mormon Tabernacle, and a whole bunch of historical buildings. You've probably heard of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and I keep saying the word Mormon over and over again in this video. Well, it's interesting to me that in 2018, the head of the Mormon Church decided that he did not want the Mormons to refer to themselves as Mormons anymore. He thought that the proper name of the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, is the proper name of the church, and Mormon is just the name of the book that the Mormons follow. It's called the Book of Mormon. So his point was that we're not the Church of Mormon, we're the Church of Jesus Christ, so we shouldn't call ourselves Mormons. So as a result of that, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is now called the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. They used to open up the choir rehearsals once a week for the public to attend, just to hear the choir rehearsing. But since COVID, people are not allowed to sit in on the rehearsals anymore. However, they do have a daily organ recital at the Tabernacle. So we're going to go over and hopefully enjoy an organ recital this afternoon. Now, what's the difference between a tabernacle and a temple? Well, the temple is the holy consecrated building of the Mormon Church that houses wedding ceremonies, other sacramental ceremonies, and only members of the Mormon Church are allowed to enter the temple. The only way a non-member could enter is if they had a recommendation from a member. So this is not a public building that people can go and tour or anything. It's just set aside for sacramental ceremonies. The tabernacle, on the other hand, is a public building that's used for meetings, conferences, large meetings of the church, and other events. So that's why the organ recital is held there and the choir rehearsals are held there. So anybody can go in there. So I'm looking forward to seeing inside of there. So if the Mormons are not supposed to refer to themselves as Mormons anymore, what should they call themselves? Well, the official line of the church is that they prefer for people to use the full name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but they have also approved the shorter version, Latter-day Saints. I don't know how this has been accepted in the everyday Mormon community. I suspect a lot of them still refer to themselves that way, since historically that's how people know them. But anyway, that's the official line. Right outside of Temple Square is the Museum of Church History and the Family Search Archives. Now, family genealogies are very important to Mormons because they believe in a sacrament called baptizing of the dead, which is one of the sacred things that can only be done in the temple by Mormon church members. And so if they can search back through their family history and find an ancestor that was not part of the Mormon church, they can baptize them after they have died. Really interesting. Right next to the tabernacle is the assembly hall. This is where just regular Sunday church services are held, and other things like recitals. I did not know that the temple is totally under construction. There's a fence all around it, and they've dug way down into the ground under the foundation, so they must be doing a huge renovation project. But this is what the temple normally looks like. The Beehive House behind me is just outside of Temple Square. This is the official residence of Brigham Young when he was the leader of the Mormon Church and the governor of the Utah Territory in the 1840s and 50s. And this was his official residence and offices. And right next to this is the Lion House. You can see the lion statue above the porch. This is the house that Brigham Young built for his wives and children because, of course, Brigham Young was a polygamist. The Mormon Church outlawed polygamy in 1890, however. The Joseph Smith Memorial Building used to be an opulent hotel, but the Mormon Church closed it down as a hotel in 1987, and now it's just offices and event space. It's beautiful in the lobby here. The Tabernacle is open every day of the week for self-guided tours, in addition to the organ recitals each day. However, the Museum of Church History and the Beehive House are not open on Sundays. And I didn't really do my research on that. I think I just assumed that since the Tabernacle was open on Sundays, that meant everything in the square was. But if you want to take advantage of those museums and tours, make sure you confirm the open times before you come. Okay, right across the street from the temple is the Church of Jesus Christ Conference Center, and that is open on Sundays as well, and there's some displays inside that we can see. The Mormons place a very high value on families, and especially having children, and it's very evident around the city. There's all kinds of paintings and statues of mothers and children. Here in the conference center, there's also a scale model of the temple with a cross-section cut out so you can see what's inside. And of course, as I said before, no non-church members are allowed inside the temple. So this is an interesting way to see what's in there. Kind of looks like a huge dollhouse. But I just read that when the temple renovations are done, scheduled to be done in 2025, before they reconsecrate the temple, they're going to open it up to the public for an open house so everybody can go in and see what it looks like before it gets reconsecrated for the members only. That is really interesting. It's the first time that outsiders will have been in the temple since 1893. So I've been doing a lot of talk in this video about Mormon history and culture, and it's just part of a larger experience that I've had with RVing around the country and seeing just how many different and diverse cultures there are in the United States. You know, we're all Americans, and we all know that America is a melting pot for all different kinds of nationalities and cultures. And I have found it fascinating as we've traveled around the country to dive deep into these cultures in the South, in Texas, in the Southwest, here in Utah, and I just find it fascinating to learn more about them. Well, we're heading back home after our weekend in Salt Lake City. We had a wonderful time exploring the city and learning so much history. And on our way home, we're driving through the city of Provo, which is just south of Salt Lake, to see Brigham Young University, which is the big Mormon university there. And now we are driving by Utah Lake, which is adjacent to Provo, on our way home. What a beautiful lake right here in the mountains of Utah. I'm really enjoying exploring this state. We've never been here before, and it's just a new experience. So I hope you learned something from this Utah video, and we will see you next time. Until then, have a great week. Bye, guys.